There you go. Excellent. Thanks. So yeah, so today is the 7th day of full stack software development using Python. For the folks who are joining the first time, it's going to be about building a full stack web application using Python, Flask, and on the front end side is going to be basic HTML, CSS. The idea of this session is to get people the understanding of how to become a full stack software developer. So it's the 7th day of it, and let's move forward. So today's agenda is going to be introduction to SQLite. Now, the application that we have, which is the Twitter clone application that we are trying to build here, it currently does not have a database. So we're going to introduce SQLite to it today and store all the data into SQLite. So at this point, we're storing all the data in an array, which is a Python array. It's an array of dictionary, and we'll refactor our code to kind of store the data in SQLite and use our model to connect to SQLite. So it's going to be more on the model side today, where we'll be dealing with data storage, creating table, and blah blah blah. All right. So let's keep moving forward. So the first item that we want to target here is what is SQLite, first of all. Now, SQLite is a database engine written in C. Okay, so it's not about Python. It's not about Node.js, or it's not about any framework that we're using. It's basically a library that's been written in C already, and then we have different kind of connectors to connect to the database engine. Right, so the library is there. The library is there, or rather, the engine is there, and then we use a library to connect to this database engine, which is written in C. So it doesn't really matter what platform we use, whether it's at this point we're using Python, but we can still connect to this database engine, which is written in C. But how do we connect? We connect using a library. Every platform that I know of, at least, has a connector written for SQLite. It's very, very famous. Okay, it's very, very famous. Now, people might ask that why use SQLite where we have MySQL Server, we have Postgres, we have Oracle, and all sort of like database servers out there. But why are we using SQLite? Well, SQLite does not replace those MySQL Server or Oracle Server or Postgres. SQLite is just a way to store your data in a file-based database. Okay, it's not going to replace that. It's a very good way of starting your database journey to start learning about relational database using MySQLite. However, when we get a little more advanced, when we see that hey, the data is now becoming huge, and I need a real server to store my data in, then SQLite provides a very nice way of migrating the data from the SQLite to MySQL Server or Postgres Server. The reason behind it is that SQLite follows the SQL standard very strictly. Okay, it's very well written, it's very well managed, and it's a very good database, a file-based database to get started with. So migrating from SQLite to a production-ready database is going to be more on the easier side than on the difficult side. All right. So let's move on to the next item, which is it's a simple database file in a binary format. So yes, it's a file-based database. It's a file-based database, but the data in the file is in binary format. So if you happen to open the file in an editor, you'll see that it's all gibberish kind of thing. We can't really read the content of the file. It's because the content of the file is in binary format. On the right side of the picture, as you can see, the application has a connector is connecting to the database file. The application here is actually the Twitter application that we are writing. And the connector is the SQLite 3 library that's built in Python. So we don't have to kind of install any kind of extra package to use SQLite. Okay, so it's already baked into a Python library. So we can just import a SQLite and we should be good to go. Okay, and we'll see in the next slide how we create a SQLite file. So here's a simple command to create a SQLite file, where, as you can see, as I said, like import SQLite 3 is basically the library, the connector. I'm basically importing the connector here. right? And then the next line of it is a SQLite.connect tweets.db, right? Tweets.db is the name of the file name. I could call it A.db, B.db, C.db. It doesn't really matter. This would still work. I mean, this is just a file name. It doesn't need a DB extension. I just put a DB extension just to explicitly, mention that this is a database file. But we could just very well call it tweets as well, and that would just simply work. These 2 lines of code, the first one is importing the connector, and the second one is actually connecting to DB, is creating a database, a file-based database on the same directory. Okay, that's basically it. That's as simple as that. You have a database now. Any questions so far?
Is SQLite 3 is a standard library, or do I need to install the package, or it's just import?
Yeah, very good question. And this is exactly what I was talking about, that you don't need to install SQLite 3 in Python. If you're using Python, SQLite 3 is already there. You can just import SQLite and you're good to go. Okay, so no package is required to be installed, which is a good thing. Yeah. Any other question?
I got a question. Is that creating the database, or is it connecting to the database?
Because
it is. If you build up that database, you can now overwrite it when you recreate it, or?
This is an excellent question. So this creates the database if the database does not exist. So tweets.db, if the file doesn't exist, it will create the file, which is actually a full-fledged SQLite database. However, if we try to reconnect, if we try to re-execute this file, it will check if the file exists. If the file exists, that it will not recreate, instead use the same one. So it will not override the data that we have in there.
Good to know. Thanks.
Okay, great. Any other question? Okay, I'll move on to the next slide then. All right, so create a table. Now we have a database already. Now, how do we create a table, right? I mean, but maybe if we're talking about table, maybe we want to talk about what tables are. Well, in SQLite is a relational database system. It's a relational database system. At this point in the market, there are so many kinds of database. The most 2 famous ones are the relational database, and the other one is document-based database. Okay, now some example of the document database is like MongoDB, and then we have, for example, what we call the other one. How can I forget the name? I keep forgetting the name. Elasticsearch, right? Elasticsearch is also a document-based database. But what we are dealing with here is a relational database. An example of relational database is definitely SQLite is one, MySQL is the other, and then we also have Postgres. Okay. Now SQLite, because SQLite is a relational database, we need to create tables. We store data by creating tables first, and tables are basically categories of data, right? Imagine you imagine customer data, right? Customer data should be stored in a customer table. Employee data should be stored in employee table. But that's and there's a whole subject on data, something called data normalization, which is definitely outside of the scope today. But I would highly encourage you to kind of just Google that and maybe spend 5-10 minutes to get an understanding of data normalization. What it teaches you is basically how to split the data, how to kind of organize the data, right? Imagine you work for a company, you have employees employees information to keep, you have salary information to keep, you have customer information to keep, you have customers' addresses, you have purchase information to keep. So how do we kind of come up with the idea of what is the architecture of the table? How many tables should be there? This is the topic of the data normalization. I want to keep this pretty simple for today because we have a practical session right after this theory session. We'll be implementing all this code and integrating our code with the SQLite. So maybe outside of the scope for today, but definitely highly recommend that please read about data normalization whenever there is a chance, whenever you can make some time. All right, so moving on to this slide again. We are here creating a table called create table tweets. Now we are creating the table tweets because we want to store tweets information, right? Now so far our tweets data is pretty simple. We have the tweet itself, which is the actual tweet, the status, your tweet text, and then the next thing is the user name of the tweet, whoever posted the tweet. So tweet and the username. These are the 2 very important information that we are currently keeping in our database. tweet and the username. However, there is another field, as you can see here, if you're seeing my mouse, underscore ID. I intentionally added that just to give you an understanding of what auto increment primary key is. Okay, now it's a good practice to keep an ID in every table so that every data that you insert, like data 1, data 2, tweet 1, tweet 2, tweet 3, tweet 4, every item will get an ID, like an employee ID, like a customer ID. Your tweet will also have an ID. This will make our life easy when we in future deal with this tweet, right? You want to update the tweet, you want to delete the tweet. ID is a very good way of saying that, hey, I want to delete this tweet, and the tweet ID is 1 or tweet ID is 10. Go ahead and delete that tweet. So this ID is going to help us in terms of managing the tweet in the future. So I just added that, which is, you can see c.execute. C.execute, and basically C is the cursor. Before I go there, maybe I want to talk about this third line here, okay? C equals connection.cursor. This connection.cursor, I would just, I would just look at it as a handle, as a control, as a handle to the SQLite commands. This cursor allows us to execute commands against the SQLite database. Okay, so we need C in order, like a cursor, in order to execute the commands. All right, the first command that we are running here, c.execute, and you can, in the execute, it takes a string, and you can run any SQL command you want. People who have SQL background or maybe have some experience, they'll very well understand. But people who don't have, I'll just elaborate this string here, c.execute, and the parameter that is taking. Create table tweets. It's pretty understandable, right? It's just saying that create a table called tweets. Okay, create a table, but what are the fields inside of it? What kind of data do you want to keep? The first field in here is underscore ID. Underscore ID is of type integer. Integer is a whole number, something like 1, 2, 10, 100, 1000. It's a whole number. It's not a decimal number, like it's not 10.20, 10.20, or 100.50. It's a whole number, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's a number. It's a primary key, which means that this number cannot be duplicated in the same table. Like 1 cannot repeat twice, 10 cannot repeat twice. So this number has to be unique in the table, okay? And it's auto increment. Why is auto increment? Is so that we don't have to keep track of how many items we have in the database, right? If you have 100 items, the next item will be 101. If you have 101, the next time will be 102, and so on, right? So the SQLite engine itself will take care of incrementing the number without us interfering or finding out what should be the next ID. It will automatically increment for us, which is a good feature, I would say, because you want to focus on your business logic and not about, how to increment the primary key, which is a very great feature. By the way, this feature of primary key auto increment and all that, this is coming from ANSI SQL, or what do you call it? Standard SQL. I should rather say standard SQL. Like this is accepted across all SQL-based databases. It should just work without a problem. It doesn't matter what database you're using, whether it's SQLite or MySQL or Postgres. This command is going to work. The next field that we have is tweet. Now, tweet space text, it just tells that my tweet is of type text. Text can be anything, A, B, C, D, blah, blah, blah. It can be a Facebook, imagine a Facebook status, imagine a Twitter, a basic tweet. All these are fall into text. Anything that text that doesn't require calculation is going to be of type text. So tweet is going to be of type text, and the next item that I have is a username, which is also a text. Okay. So far, any question?
Is there specific intention at the key, which is underscore ID, as underscore ID, or like?
Yeah, very good
like
question.
ID?
Very excellent question. Now, the reason behind keeping it as underscore, adding an underscore before it is because ID, if I'm not mistaken, is a built-in keyword of Python. Okay, I think ID identifies, if you put ID and pass a variable to it, I think it's like a function. It provides the memory address or memory ID of a variable. Okay, so that's the reason underscore ID is just to not make it conflict with the existing built-in ID function.
Cool.
Okay. By the way, this underscore ID is going to create an ID in the SQLite. Okay, we could actually, honestly, we could keep it as an just ID. We remove the underscore from there. I think it's my habit that I tend to avoid all kind of possible conflict in future. So I just added the underscore. But as far as SQLite is concerned, SQLite is not Python. SQLite is not Python. SQLite is SQLite. So we could use just ID without a problem. But because I'm using Python and there can be a potential chance of in future mixing things up, I added underscore in front of it.
And the 3 quotes in front of create table, is that significant, or is that just the command structure?
It's just because it's called doc string. Okay. It also allows us to create a string that has multiple lines. Okay, because I split the sentence, split the command into multiple lines. I used three quotes and 3 quotes. I did the doc string instead of no single string. If I use single string, the entire command would require to be in a single line. So I just broke into multiple lines, and that's why I use doc string. But it's as good as a simple string.
So the more lines you have, the more quotes you have. Is that what you said?
Say that again, please.
Does each one of those quotes represent 1 line, or is it?
Okay, so if this doc string, 3 lines, is just nothing but another kind, and it's nothing but string, but allows us to split the line into multiple lines. That's basically it. It's just as good as a simple single quote string.
Yeah. So I'm looking at the c.execute open bracket, and then the 3 quotation marks there, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
In front of create. Yeah. So that's. So if I have 4 lines, would there be 4 there, or is it just 3 always?
No, you can. It's 3. C.execute takes a string. Okay, C.execute takes a string. Now, you can create a string with single quote. You can create a string with 3 quotes. They all are a string end of the day. But I use 3 quotes here because I have new lines. I broke the lines into multiple. That's it. It allows you to create multiple lines, but end of the day, it's just a single line text. It's just convenience, nothing else.
Okay.
All right. Any more question? Someone said, so should there be a connection.close? It's a very good question. Yes, there should be a connection.close, which is not in this picture, but you want to close the connection when you're done with the application completely, right? So connection.close is very important if you know that you don't want to, if you don't want to use the connection anymore. But if you close the connection, you have to connect it again before using it. So it's a very good question. Yes, there should be a connection.close once you're done with, done with the SQLite connectivity. Now, let's talk about the last line here, which is connection.commit. We should not be forgetting this. It's not something that I'm a big fan of. C.execute, which is the cursor.execute, clearly says that go ahead and execute this command. But in SQLite, if we don't commit, if we don't say connection.commit, then the execution didn't really end up, get stored in your file. So this is like, I'm done, store everything in the file. So we cannot forget that. So if you ever see that you have been trying to execute something, creating a table, but it's not really creating it, so maybe you are missing connection.commit. So let's not forget that. Okay. So if there is no further question, I'll move on to the next slide. All right, some SQLite data types. Well, as you can see here, we only dealt with 1 or 2 data types, like text and integer, right? Maybe it's important to talk about some other data types as well. There are not many. There's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Null is definitely a null type database, which means that it's an absence of value. Null is absence of value. Null is available. Integer, we already talked about it. It's a whole number, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, you name it, like 100, 1000, right? Real number is something that allows you to add floating points value. For example, 10.50, 100.1, right? It allows you to add a floating point. Text is just simple text. It allows, like, as you can see, UTF-8, which is a very famous encoding system, covers a lot of languages. So all UTF text is covered along with some other support as well. So text should be just good enough to cover most of the languages out there in the world. Blob is if you want to store any kind of binary data. Imagine you want to store an image, which I definitely don't recommend. Imagine you want to store an image inside of your database, the entire image binary, then you could use blob. you want some kind of binary data, use blob blob type of data type. Any question about the data types? Okay, I'll move on to the next one. So now let's talk about inserting the data into the table finally. Okay, so now in the last slide, we created the table, create table tweets. Now we have the table tweets. How about inserting the data? So in order to insert the data, again, we need c.execute to kind of execute the command. Okay, the command is pretty clean and easy. Insert into tweets. Insert into tweets to insert data into tweets, and then I pass values. And the values are as follows. The first value is null. The second value is :tweet. The third value is :username. Okay. The one with colon is basically nothing but a placeholder. It's just saying that this value will be passed in the next parameter. The null is saying that the first value is null. So you can see that I've passed 3 values: null, tweet, username. This is the first index. Null is the first index. Tweet is the second index. Username is the third index. Now, if you go back to the table that we created, we had the first item that we had in the table is _ID. The second item was tweet. The last item, the third item, was username. The reason we passed null to _ID is because so that SQLite takes care of auto-incrementing it. Okay, SQLite will take, because there are 3 fields: ID, tweet, and the username. So we pass null in place of ID so that it automatically, SQLite increment the ID behind the scene without us doing anything. Okay, so just pass null for auto increment. Then the second item that we have is :tweet. :tweet is just a placeholder. It's saying that the value is coming in the next parameter. Username is the same. The value is coming in the next parameter. And you can see that there is a comma, and then we are passing a dictionary where we provide the actual value of the tweet and the actual value of the username. Okay, so this way, this tweet, in the second parameter, tweet value, whatever we put there will be the value of :tweet. Whatever the username we pass here will be the value of :username. And then finally, let's not forget to do connection.commit to actually save that data into the database. So that's as simple as that. Any question about inserting the data? Okay, sounds like everyone understood it. I just want to mention that this is not the only way of inserting data. I mean, the syntax is kind of similar, but instead of named variable like we have here, tweet and username, we could also have, something like question mark. This is another syntax which I personally don't like, because that forces you to remember the index of the field, which is something, it's very easy to mix things up. So I prefer having a named field like :tweet and :username. That way, it's very difficult to make a mistake. Okay, so I'll move on to the next one. So this is about inserting the data into the table. And then the next one. Okay, how do we retrieve the data? In order to retrieve the data, again, retrieving the data is probably the most simplest, because it's as easy as running a command like select star from tweets. Tweets is the table, and star means everything. Select everything from table. Select everything from table. So what it's going to do is going to execute select everything from table the moment we run this command, c.fetchMany. This is new. c.fetchMany. There are multiple fetch commands. There are multiple fetch commands in SQLite. One is c.fetchMany, which allows you to fetch multiple fields from the table. Okay, here I'm saying the fetch many, and in bracket I have 10. It just says that, hey, I want the first 10. I want the first 10 records only. Okay, there is also something called c.fetch1 or the cursor.fetch1 that will fetch the first item only if you're interested only in one item. If you do fetch many, you need to pass how many items you want to retrieve, where 10 just says that give me the first 10 items. Well, there is something also called fetch all. Fetch all will return all the data from the table, which I wouldn't recommend, because, what if you have 10,000 rows in there, 100,000 rows in there? Now, retrieving 100,000 records from the database is going to overwhelm your application, right? You'll have a significant memory problem, and this is definitely not something a good developer should do. A good developer should try to think about the edge cases and handle those cases. In this case, we're doing c.fetchMany with a parameter of 10, which means we'll always have 10 records at max. Any questions so far?
What's the data type for the tweets after you fetch it? Is it like a string or is it?
That's a great question. I think I should have covered it, but thanks for asking this question. Tweets, the data type that's getting returned from the fetch many is basically an array of dictionary. Okay, because we have what do we have in the table? We have the ID, we have the tweet, we have the username, right? So because we are asking for multiple tweets, what we get in return is an array, because an array or a list or a Python list. A Python list is a way of storing multiple data in a list. So we get in return a list, but the list contains dictionary. Okay, and the dictionary has 3 keys: underscore ID, username, and what's the last one? Tweet. Underscore ID, username, tweet. So it's gonna be a list of dictionaries, and the dictionary will contain the list will contain maximum 10 items in there. Does that answer the question?
Oh, thanks.
Great. Let's move on to the next one. Let's see what we have. Okay. Now this is important. Retrieve data with condition, right? We don't want tweets all the time. We do have a case, the people who joined in the last session, we do have a case where we want to see all the tweets from a specific user, right? So how do we do that? It's very similar to the last command. We need to run c.execute, cursor.execute, and the command that we run is select everything from tweets, but with a condition where username equals :username. Exactly like what we have done in the last, one of the slides in the past. :username, anything with colon is just a placeholder, which means that I want all the tweets from a specific user where the username matches. And then I'm passing the username as a second parameter, where username is whatever username I pass, which means that it will get all the tweets where the username matches the past username. So this is called filtering or retrieving data using conditions. And again, c.fetchMany or cursor.fetchMany will return, as you can see, 10 items, 10 tweets where the username matches the username. Okay, so the last one that we had, it retrieved everything, select star from tweets. So you get all the tweets from the database. But we need only the first 10, because that's why we have passed fetch many 10. So we have 10 tweets from the database. It doesn't really matter who the user is. We just retrieve it from the database. But here we specify the username. Now we'll have only the tweets from a specific username. Very useful when you're filtering stuff. Any questions so far? Okay, then let's move on to the next item. Wow, all right, we are kind of, from the theory perspective, we're kind of done. So it's time for coding. So let's integrate a SQLite. So what we're gonna do now is that we'll be importing SQLite in our Twitter app, number one. We'll create a db.py to implement the SQLite related functions, things that we have learned now. And then we refactor our code to use our new db.py module. Does that make sense? All right, so I'll be sharing, let me share, I'll go to Repl.it, and this is our Raptor Coder Twitter day 7, okay? And this is what we are left with from the last class, okay? And I'll be sharing the link with you in the chat. I'll generate a link, copy the link, and then in the chat, I'll be sharing the link. So you'll be able to click on the link and then log in, and we can all code together. Please click on the link in the chat. All right. I can see 2 members joined. I will need volunteers, please. I don't want to code. Instead, we want to code together, right? We want to code together. When we code together, we learn together. Okay. So as is the intention of this class is to learn something and then implement at the same time. So so we kind of remember what you have learned. All right. So any volunteer who's willing to code? Could you just raise your hand? Who is volunteering, please? Okay, Sam is volunteering. Anyone else? There is nothing right or wrong here. We'll code together. We'll code together. So even if you write, wrong code, there is nothing called wrong. Like it's all part of learning. So Sam, is anyone else? I'm definitely here to help you. All right. So, okay, thank you, Shankar and Alia. Great. So thanks. So let's get started. So first thing first, let's see what we have in the model. Okay, we talked about MVC, Model View Controller, in one of our last classes. And as you know, accessing the data and managing the data is part of the model, right? It's part of the model. So now we're introducing database. Where do you think the database should be? Where do you think the database should be going? Is it the controller? Is it the view? Or is it the model?
I think it's the model.
Yep. It is the model, right? And let's go and see what we have in the model. So on the left side, the tweets.py, right? And this is our very, very basic, simple model that we have so far, right? Line number 1 has tweets equals empty array. So this is our existing in-memory database kind of thing where we used to store all the tweets, right? Now, this is we don't want this anymore. We can keep this, but we'll definitely have to refactor this code so that we can access, we can get the data from database instead of just from the in-memory database. So let's keep that. But how about we create a new data layer? Okay, new data layer. Okay, let's create a file called tweets.db. Let's create a file called not tweets.db. Let's get a file called db.py. My bad. Sorry, db.py. So that will be the db.py will be responsible for handling all kind of database connectivity, okay, and it will provide us with all SQLite functionalities. Okay. Now, in order to create a new file, you can just on the left side here, there's a new file link. If you just click there. And db.py. I can see that db.py has been created. All right. So, the first thing first, we need to import the SQLite library, right? Or the connector, I should say. So let's import SQLite 3. Okay, excellent. Then hit enter. Let's go to the next line. After the SQLite is here, what do you think is the next command should be? I think the next command should be, no, I don't want to say that. Anyone? We need the connection. We need the connection, right? We need to create the file and have a connection with the file. Okay, so we can call it, we can declare a variable called con. Con stands for connection. Okay, and then con equals SQLite.connect. So let's go. I'll just quickly show you the connect command in case if you don't remember. So connection equals SQLite3.connect. Okay, and then the first parameter will be the name of the file. So it's going to be, let's call it tweets.db. Okay. And then, so now this should give us the connection to the DB. Now, if we just run this file, what do you think will happen?
Not much.
It will create the tweets.db file, right? So it will create the tweets.db file. And again, if the file does not exist, it will create it. But if it does exist, it will not override it. Okay. So why don't we just run this and see what happens? Okay. Why don't we just run this file and see what happens? How do we run this file? In order to run this file, we can just, for now, from in the main.py, we can just import db and that would do the job. Or in the tweets.py even, you can go to the, in the main.py, we can import it right here, that import db. Well, we want to import the DB, the db.py. db.py is a Python module. If you joined one of my last classes, it's just a Python module. So we can just import it anywhere we want. We can just say import db. There you go. And that's good enough. No, we don't need the extension. If you're importing a Python module, we don't need the extension. So the input db is just good enough. So I'm going to go ahead and run this and let's see what happens. Okay. All right. I think the server started. Okay. Server started. Let's stop this and see what happens on the left side. Do you see any difference? Anyone notice a difference? The db.py got executed and tweets.db got created, right? Tweets.db got created. And as you can see, the tweets.db file is there. It doesn't contain anything, but the file got automatically created, right? Which means surely our DB file got imported and the connection was successful, because when it tries to connect, the file doesn't exist. It creates the file. We can see the file already on the left side. Great job. All right, so let's move on to the next one. The next command is going to be to get the handle to the file. Now, how do we get the handle? It's basically the cursor. Okay, it's basically the cursor. Let's create the table. In order to create a table, we need to get the cursor first. C equals connection.cursor. This is the handle to the SQLite command executor. And then we can do c.execute, and then we can run the command. Okay, so let's do that. .execute. No. You have the cursor already, line number 3, you have the cursor already, okay? Cursor.execute to execute the command. And the command that we want to run is, let's use single quote this time. Someone was asking, one of the members was asking that can we use single quote? Of course we can. And the command is going to be create table. Create table. And the table that we're going to create is called tweets. TWEETS.
Sorry, I'm having a bit of a trouble with that one.
Okay. Okay, create table tweets. But when we create a table, we also need to specify what are the fields they're going to be, right? What the fields they're going to be. So I'll go back and share the slide once again. It's going to be create table, then the table name. Then we need a bracket and specify how many fields we need. In this case, we are having ID, tweet, and the username. ID is going to be integer, tweet is going to be text, username is going to be text as well. But ID is special, it's going to be integer, primary space key, then space auto increment. Integer, primary space key, and then auto increment. Integer because it's 1, 2, 3, 4 is a whole number. Primary key because it cannot be duplicated. Auto increment because I want SQLite to automatically increment the number. Okay, so let's do that. So it's create table tweet space. Maybe I can help a little bit here. Okay. Someone has copy pasted it. That's a good idea as well.
Yeah, do you want to check it?
Yeah, I think this should fly. Okay, but are we missing something here? Can someone identify what is missing here?
Commit.
Exactly. We're missing the commit, right? Because if we don't commit, then it's not going to be stored in the file. So let's do that.
Gonna change to the database, correct? If we commit the changes to the commit.
Change what? Sorry.
If we change, if we use con.commit, will it change to the database for
Yes,
the?
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly. Yeah. So we need to do connection.commit. So this con.commit.
Just is that semicolon after the second last parentheses of line 5? Is that supposed to be there?
I don't think it's necessary, but I don't think it's going to harm either. But since it's not necessary, I'll just probably get rid of it because it just will raise more questions than answers. So I'll just, I mean, if that is confusing, I'll get rid of that, and that's perfectly fine. We don't need that semicolon, but I know MySQL or SQL in general allows semicolon. So, all right. So now I think our code is in good shape. How about we give it a shot? We stop it and rerun it and see what happens. Okay. Stop it and I'll rerun it. Since we imported the DB in the main, I know that it got executed already. Okay, let's try to open tweets.db and see what's in there. And there you go. This contains data that's absolutely unreadable because that's in binary format. It's not supposed to be readable by human. So I'll just close that. So I think we did the job very well. It created the table already in there. So I think our table is there already. So let's go ahead and move on to the next step. Yeah.
When you try to execute again, does that create a table again, or is it going to be conflict or
exactly what I was coming to, right? Exactly what I was coming to. So let's stop it and say let's run it again and see what happens. Okay. See, look at my screen. Okay, look at my screen on the right side because the console will have information for you. Okay, I'll rerun it, and I would expect an exception to be thrown. And there you go. The exception is thrown here. If you see my screen, it's complaining that there's an operational error. The table tweets already exists. So you're trying to create the table again where the table is already existing, right? So how do we handle that? How do you handle that? I know this was not covered in the slide, but I intentionally did not cover because let's experience the error and let's fix that. Okay, now we definitely want to make sure that whenever we run the application, if the database doesn't exist, let's create a database. If the table doesn't exist, let's create the table. But we don't want the application from stopping from running in case the table exists. In that case, we need to handle the error. In that case, we need to handle the error. The creation of the table, the creation of the database is more of an initialization work, right? More of an initialization work. So what I would do, I would create a function in the db.py. I'll create a function called init function, and then put all the initialization code inside of that function, and then handle the error when we call that function. Okay, so
Got another
maybe-
question. Actually,
please.
is in SQLite, is there like that create table if not exists?
That's an excellent question, and I think that the command exists. Create table if not exist should be there. You know, honestly, I'm very happy that you're raising that. I even also forgot about this command. I've not been using for so long. Create table if not exist should also be there. Should also be there. Let me try it out. And it should be as simple as that. As a create table tweets. If not exist.
Just to chime in for a second, is that basically the equivalent of like an if statement, as in like if, you know,
Yeah.
if it already exists? Okay, so that we don't get the table tweets already exist error in the
Exactly.
console. Okay, cool. I just
Exactly.
want to double check. Sweet.
Yeah. So what I was suggesting is that we handle the error on the Python side. What this solution is even better, because it's going to handle the error on the SQLite engine side. All right. So let's try to run it and see. Excellent. This just worked. This is awesome. I should have included that. Maybe I'll just add that to my slide as well for you know, just for reference to add to the slide so people can see the slide as well. Thank you so much for suggesting that. But that solves the problem.
Actually,
But-
is it possible quickly touch on the how to handle on the different way handle from
On the Python side?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. So maybe let's do that. I'll just copy this, and maybe I'll just comment this out for now. Okay. And this is the Python way of doing it. So what I was suggesting is this, that we have something called def init. Okay, so this is an init function, and then inside the init function, we'll be running this command, create table, but we'll not have if not exist, because we want it to throw the exception, right? And then we'll also be running this commit command inside of it. Now from outside, what we'll do is that we'll call init function from outside. So it will go ahead and call this function. So what happens is that the init function will only execute when we call it from outside. So let's not call the init function from here. Instead, let's call the init function from the main, because I like it that way. Okay, so what I'm going to do is that from here, I will do from db import init, right? Import init, and then I will call init here. So this is going to be doing the same thing. This is basically exactly the same code, but now it requires me to call the init function to initialize the DB. Okay, let's save that, stop it, and rerun it. It should throw an exception. I haven't really solved the problem. I just refactored the code to use the function, which is great. Okay, now let's go ahead and fix that. Now we know that where the error is being thrown. We know this execute function is throwing the error. As you can see on the right side, line number 8 is throwing the exception. Line number 8 in here is throwing the exception. And as you can see, the exception is SQLite.operational error, right? I'll copy this error. And then I'll go here inside the init function, and I'll say try. There's something called try catch. It's something I have not covered yet. But it's not super difficult to understand. What I'm doing here is I'm telling Python, try to execute this function. However, be careful because it can throw an exception. So how do you say that? In Python, we say that, but except SQLite.operational error. And I want to alias it as E. It's just a variable. I'm just giving error and a variable. E is the error that will be thrown. Okay. Now here, if in case there is an error, this block of code will get executed. In case there is an error. Specifically, if there is an operational error, this block will get executed. Now, inside of this block, what I will say that I'll just print the DB, the table, maybe just table, twit already exist, skipping creation. Okay, that's just some information for the user that, hey, the table exists already. I'm just skipping that because, just don't want to crash the application. So let's rerun that and see what happens. All right, it's taking a while to run. I don't know why. Sometimes it runs out of memory because we have a shared server still working. Not that our code is doing anything. I think it's more on the Repl side. It's probably waiting for resources. Give it a few sec.
Well, I guess my question while it's waiting, is it best practice to handle the try except in the DB module, or is it better to move this outside try out except on the main module, the main.py?
So you're asking that if the try catch should be inside the init or should be inside the main?
Yeah, so what is the best practice here?
Okay, if you ask me, I don't think it's anything wrong with either of these approach. But if you ask me, I would put the try catch inside the init instead of the main file. You want the main file to be as clean as possible, right? You want the main file to be as clean as possible. You don't want to, include unnecessary conditions, exception handling in the main, because main should be very, very straightforward, right? Main should be just like a manager. Do these, do that, do these, do that. But then when a manager, when a manager commands an employee to do something, okay, the manager doesn't handle the exception. The worker will go ahead and handle the exception and let manager know, hey, by the way, there was a error, but I handled it, right? So the manager can focus on other stuff instead of focusing on very smaller details, because then the manager will be busy doing smaller things, which is not the manager is not supposed to be handling those, go get into that detail and fix all the errors in there. So if you ask me, I would just call init function from here and let init function handle all the error inside of the function itself. So the complication comes into the db.py and not in the main.
Cool.
Does that answer the question? But
Thank
there is no right or wrong answer here. This is just as a personal preference. I like keeping the main very clean. That's just my personal preference. And I also, from experience, I can tell you that the more cleaner the managers are, the better your code, the more readable your code is.
I also have a follow-up question on that. Do you have a quick second?
Please.
So I'm still a little new, so sorry if this is like a dumb question, but you have the I know you did the init function with try and accept, and then someone else suggested just doing like if not exist tweets like built into the line of code. Do you think that the init would be like a much cleaner way of writing it just for other people to read?
Yeah, so if you're asking that whether we should be using this way of doing it, like handling the error, and then instead if we just use the create function if not exist, I would definitely use create table if not exist. That's way more cleaner.
Yeah.
Okay. Why handle the exception? Like it's not why handle the exception? When we throw an exception, is first of all is consuming the CPU cycle, right? Is something that could be handled on the SQLite side already. So why handle this, adding this extra burden to the code? I would definitely go with the line number 5 solution. So let me refactor that, and I'll just get rid of. Maybe I just comment out with this line just for reference that we did that, and then let's paste this cursor.execute.
I have a question.
Please.
For the function init, would you be able to put that to end so you could end the script to create the table, or
the function init?
Yeah. Like could you put that at the end, the bottom of the line? So if I did this, for example, if I
yeah, we could do that. Yeah, we could do that. But the reason I didn't do that is because, a Python module should probably not execute anything without, when we import a module, we don't want the module to do anything unless I tell it to, right? Otherwise, what will happen that you unintentionally may be executing some code that maybe you want, but your friend doesn't, right? Imagine you're sharing the code and you wrote this branch of code, and then after that he wants to extend it. He doesn't just want the init to be called when it's imported. Now, if line number 18, if you do it this way, the moment db.py is imported, this code will get executed because you're calling the function right away, right? A better way of doing it, and it's my opinion, that don't execute it yet. Let the manager, let the caller decide whether to call it or not. Right, so then the flexibility is there. This is a better approach in my opinion.
Interesting. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, so that's the reason in the main you can see that we have the init and then we are calling init. So that the manager is deciding whether even it's obvious, right? Even you are importing the DB, you'd probably want to init it, but still it allows the developer the flexibility to decide whether to run it or not. Because life is very different. Imagine your unit testing and stuff, right? If you're unit testing your code, then there's a totally different story. Now you're not testing anything, so it's like super simple. Like everyone knows that, hey, we just want to get things up and running. But if you want to unit test stuff, you don't want to create the table yet, right? The approach will be different. There is something called dependency injection. You don't want to actually create a physical file. Maybe you want to do it in memory. So the init function will change drastically. So that's why the flexibility is really important.
Okay, I see what you mean.
I was thinking
right.
more the view control perspective, like if every single controller, many controller gonna call the model, this file gonna become very expensive, right? Because every file gonna call the model to init the DB, which is gonna be very expensive.
That's correct. This is a very good point. If there are multiple modules requiring the DB module, then init function will get executed every time it got imported, right? Which is also not something we want. That's why I think the init function should only be called, should given the flexibility to call it from outside instead of calling it directly at the end of the file. Okay, I think I'll just remove the line number 18 and just move forward. So I'll stop it. Oh, by the way, on the right side, you can see that the table tweet already exists, skipping creation, right? This message is coming from here, which means we were handling it here. Now, we are not executing this function anymore because we now have cursor.execute directly, which is doing the job pretty well. All right, so let's move forward. Now we have the init function created. I think we need more data function now. Now the table is created, database is created. How about adding tweets to the table? Okay, so let's do that. So can someone write a function called create or insert tweet or create tweet, a Python function that will take two parameters. The tweet and the username. And it will go ahead and take this username and tweet and insert into the database. So in the db.py, we need a function called create tweet. This function is responsible for creating tweets and inserting into the database.
You tell me what else you wanted. I'm still a little trying my best.
There's the username and tweet. The first parameter will be the username. Second parameter will be the tweet.
That's all I got.
Yeah, so you got the username and tweet as a parameter, which is a great job, right? I think the function definition is great. The next step that we need is we need to execute the SQL statement, right? So we can go ahead and we don't have to write everything. We can go ahead and copy this line. I can do that for you.
Thank you.
And then in here, we'll just paste it, okay? And what we need is cursor. I think we need to refactor, should be cursor instead. Cursor.execute, insert into tweet's values, null, tweet, and the username. And the tweet will be whatever tweet has been passed as a parameter, and username is going to be the same, whatever has been passed as a parameter. Then I'm saying that connection.commit to actually insert that tweet into the DB. Okay. I think this should fly. I think we need two more functions. One more function is yeah, I think one more function is going to be to get all tweets. Can someone write a function, get all tweets? And that will execute this SQL statement to get all the tweets from the DB.
You would,
So it's going to be def. And again, every Python function should start with 2 lines of gap, like 2 blank lines.
Can I ask a question here?
Yep.
I'm still fuzzy about line 19 where the semicolon tweet semicolon username. So I'm sure those are the placeholders. I'm assuming these are the mapping the field name which we created on the line 14 where the tweet and the username, right? The name has to be exactly matched.
Exactly. No, the name doesn't have to exactly match. This is actually, yeah, so that's a very good question. I think it got tangled a little. So let me explain that. So insert into tweets values. Then we have the first value, second value, and the third value. SQLite cares about the position of the value. The first one is ID. The second one is tweet. The third one is username. We could just name it T, and we could just name this one U. Okay, these are just placeholders. Okay, but the position of it is important. The first position matches with the first position in here, which is ID. The second position matches with the second position, which is basically what? The tweet. The third one is definitely the username. So, and then here, since we changed the placeholder's name, is going to be T, and the second one is going to be U.
Oh,
so you're abbreviating.
That's correct. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure too, you can specify the columns you want to include too.
It might be possible, but as of my understanding so far, there are 2 ways of doing it.
Yeah,
okay,
like
maybe
here's
one
like
is
an example. Here's an example. So I think you can write something like this.
Yes, but here what you're doing is you're running an SQL statement directly, right? And you specified the field name here with a customer name, city, and country. Yes, then you can shuffle the places from, the city can go first and customer name can come second. That's fine, but that's SQL statement. This is, however, not, Python placeholders, right? If you want to then parameterize the values, and if the values you want the values to come from Python, then you have to parameterize this as well, right?
Yeah, correct.
For example, cardinal will become cardinal. Then there you go, it's another one. And then the last one will be Norway, right? Norway. And then again, we'll have to pass a dictionary to kind of fill in the, replace the token, right? So end of the day, whether you can shuffle the names or not, yes, using this syntax here, you can change the positions But this syntax still remains the same because you'll need the placeholders to kind of replace the value. Someone might say that, well, how about making it, if you know, formatted string in Python, right? Something called this, something like this. Can we use formatted string, right? Can we use formatted string? You can do that. And you can also, instead of passing colon cardinal, you could do this cardinal, right? But remember, this is not recommended because there is something called SQL injection, right? If we don't take care of that, the people, whatever blank value, whatever dangerous value is coming from the user will get inside the SQL, and that will end up in something called SQL injection vulnerability, right? Which is definitely something you don't want. Instead, you want to use this tokenized system that is SQLite has provided you. Does that make sense?
Yep.
All right, I'll just remove the line number 23 cursor. Okay, get all. Okay, yeah, this is gonna be get all tweets. There should be select star from tweets. And then how do we get the data?
I think
It's gonna
you're
be
missing something.
cursor.fetch all. Cursor.fetch all. You can see the command here. There you go. C.execute and then cursor.fetch. Fetch all will return all the item, and fetch all A is small. A is the small letter. To return all the items, but it's not recommended, but I think it's safe in our application because we don't have so many tweets, so we can keep it that way. But we need to return tweets as well, right? Because this function is about getting all the tweets. So you got the tweet, you store that in tweets variable, you need to return the tweets as well. Yeah, and you need to add a tab in the beginning. Yeah. Okay, we got double tab here. Yeah, I think that should fly. Return tweets. Great. And the next function that we need, and this is the final function, by the way. Is the final function is got get tweets by username. And I can help you with the SQL here. It's going to be define and the username as a username will be in the parameter. Excellent. And then let me just reformat that. And then I'll copy paste. Sorry, I'll copy paste the command here. And there you go. So I just copy pasted this SQL command from the slide. Here it says that select star is, oh, so we need to change C to cursor. And select star from tweets where username equals username, and then we're passing the username. I'm setting the username which we got in the parameter, right? So here. So I think this should fly. And then we got the tweets, and this will be cursor dot fetch many. Okay, let's use fetch many this time. Then we can fetch 10 items from there. We also need to return the tweets from here. Okay, but the return should be aligned with the indentation in the function. Great. Okay, now let's review our code. First of all, we have an init function that creates the DB and it creates the table. Second, we have create tweet, allows us to create the tweet into the DB. And then we had get all tweets, returns all the tweets. Then we have get tweets by username. These are all the functions that we need in order to serve our Twitter application. So let's proceed and refactor our existing code to use the database. Okay. How about, since we wrote some code, how about we run the application and see if everything is working fine in case we have any syntax error. And there you go, we have a syntax error. It says that DB pi line number 9 has a problem. I think we just need to get rid of that because this doc string is getting executed as well. Let's save that and let's rerun it. Okay, now it's working, everything is fine. So I believe our function is working fine. So let's go ahead and refactor our code. Okay, refactor our code. Now this is the first db.py module that we created. If you go to tweets.py, this is the function that this is the module that we created in one of the last classes. And you can see that it's getting the data from an internal variable. We don't want an internal variable anymore. We have now database, right? We have our own database and we want to retrieve the data from the database instead. So let's get rid of the line number 1. We don't want the tweets variable anymore. We can just remove line number 1. Yeah, and maybe remove all these blank lines. And then in here, now we need to import the DB, all the DB functionalities, right? So I would recommend that you do import DB, import DB. All right, now line number 4, when people call get all tweets, we should return what? Just to get rid of line number 4, the tweets variable from here. Let me help you. So I'll just remove this tweets. So whoever calls this get all tweets function, get all tweets, where can we get the tweets from? It's basically DB, which the file that we just created, dot get, what's the name of the function? Let me get all tweets. Get all tweets. Can someone complete that? Get all tweets. Sorry, it's gonna be, sorry, let me write the first one.
Sorry, I
DB
think
dot,
we do the same time.
okay, yeah, db.get all tweets, and this is a function. That's it. So whoever calls the tweets get all tweets is gonna actually just proxy the function to call the db.get all tweets. You might be thinking that, hey, why do we have the same function in the DB file and also in the tweets file? I'll come to that. This is for the best practice. This is for the best practice. Our entire application nodes is connected. The view is connected with tweets.py. The controller is connected with the tweets.py. Controller doesn't have any idea about the db.py. It just got created. How it helps us is that in future, if you want to change the DB layer to something like MongoDB or MySQL or Postgres, you don't have to touch the rest of the functions in your application. You can just change the DB model and then everything will just work, right? So that's the reason why we do have a proxy function. In the tweets.py, we have get all tweets and it's doing nothing but calling db.get all tweets. In future, if you have a different database, you can import, for example, if you have Mongo, then you can import the Mongo module here and call the Mongo function, which is mongo.get all tweets. Then mongo.add tweet, mongo.get tweets by username, and so on. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right. So let's refactor the next function, which is the define add tweet. Now, if you remember, we have an add tweet function, which is defined in the db.py. So let's remove the code, line number 7 to 11.
You said remove lines 7 to 11, right?
7 to 11, yes. And then
Yeah.
the add tweet will proxy the function now. It will call the DB function directly in line number 7. Yeah, it's going to be db.addTweet. It's going to be actually create tweet, not add tweet. So it's going to be line number 7. If you remove line number 7 and instead add db.create tweet.
Here, show me. I'm confused.
Okay, let me help. So what it's going to be is that it's going to be db dot create tweet, because this is the function that we created here. This is the function we created here, create tweet, right? db.create tweet, and then db.create tweet takes 2 parameters, the username and the tweet. Username is the first parameter, tweet is the second parameter. So it's going to be username and tweet. So basically doing nothing. Whoever calls add tweet, I'm just calling, hey, just insert the data into the DB, done. Okay. So now can you do the same for get tweets by username?
Get tweet username, yeah. But can I use the def function?
So you have get sorry, get tweets by username. What we have to do, we have to just remove everything from here because this is the existing implementation, right?
So you're not defining a new function, you're calling it, if that makes sense.
Exactly, yeah. Because all the functions are already created. I mean, in the last class, all the functions are already created that serve the purpose, like getting all the tweets, adding all the tweets. But how we added the tweet, how we got the tweet were different because the variables were in-memory variables. Now we have a database, so we're just changing the implementation, but keeping the function name exactly the same. What happens now is that the other side of the application has no idea that we have implemented database layer already. So we don't have to change the view side of it. We don't have to change so much of the controller. We are just changing the DB model and everything will be working fine without a problem. Okay, so here we just have to remove this line and get tweets by username. This will be doing nothing but just saying that, hey, you know what? Let me just call my DB function to get all my tweets by username. So just this. Okay. Return get tweets by username takes 1 parameter, which is username, right? So as you can see, it's just the username. It's doing nothing. Tweets.py is doing nothing but just proxying the functions to the db.py. And that's the beauty of it. In future, if you want to change it, move this data to AWS, you just change the DB model functions calls here, and then you'll be good. So that's how your code becomes more extendable in the future. Now, having said that, I think it's a good time for us to kind of put our application into test and see if everything is working. So I'll just stop the application and rerun it. Okay. So far, so good. I will open in a new tab. Okay. I'll be keeping an eye to see that if there is an error. Okay. I'll log in as Hassan, login, and it says what is happening. So login was successful. I'll say that good morning, and I'll tweet. And it was expected. You can see there is an internal server error. So let's see what the error is. The error is, if you read on the right side, the SQLite object created is a thread that can only be said in the same thread. This is a thread safety exception, okay? This is intentionally something I wanted to be handled at the end of the session because it's something very different. Okay, something very different that is not really something, you know, what it's not really something that we wanted to cover in this session. But all I wanted to add here is that whenever we connect to the tweets.db, we have to mention here that it's safety thread check same thread equals false. So this is a feature that we have inside of a Python when multiple threads tries to access the same SQLite feature. Okay, then we have this thread safety problem. At this point, just know that we can just ignore this error by adding this file here, the check same thread false. That will allow us to run this application without a problem. Again, not something that I wanted to cover thread in this class, but it's just something that we cannot run without. So I just added the thread safety handler here. So let's try once again. Go back. I'll try and log in again with Hassan, my username, log in, and tweets will be good morning. There you go. And tweet. Hey, successfully received tweet. Good morning. Excellent. I think it is working. So let's go back, add another tweet. Good morning to and tweet. I think we added 2 tweets successfully. Now, if you go to /tweets, we should be able to see all the tweets. So let's see what happens. Oh, that is a problem. Looks like it's showing three tweets. I don't know why 3. Maybe someone added a 3rd one, but it's not showing me the tweet and the username. So maybe something wrong in the template. So let's go ahead and fix that. So our template is here where we have tweets.html. This tweets.html is responsible for rendering the template. So let's go here. And as you can see, what is happening here is that, again, SQLite is not returning a dictionary. SQLite is returning only a list or a tuple in the array. So the first item is the ID. The second item is the tweet. And the third item, I think, is the username. So instead of the name field in here, because it's SQLite, we'll just have to access it using the placeholder, which is the first item and the second item of the area. Am I making sense here? What is happening here is that SQLite, when data is returned, it didn't return a dictionary. It returned a tuple where the 0th element is the ID, first element is the tweet, second element is the username. So let's go back to the DB. It exactly returns the same way. This is the 0 number element, ID. This is the 1 number element, which is the tweet. This is the second element, which is the username. So we need to access data in the same order. So we are interested in the tweet and the username. So we are looping through here. It's a loop basically. We're doing tweet in tweets, and the tweets first element, the element number, the first 1th element is the tweet itself, and the second element is the username. Does that make sense? Anyone? Question?
I have a question. So
Yeah.
you logged in with some other user, but when you were fetching the tweets on that web page, if you go back, so the username is Sam, logout Sam. It's
because someone else logged in as well. So
okay.
So what happens is that this application is not perfect, and this application allows one user to be logged in at a time. So if I log in and then if Sam logs in, my session is get overridden by Sam's session. Okay,
right.
And this is a flaw that we'll have to fix.
So probably it was returning his tweets. Maybe.
It will be returning his tweets, yes, because the username has changed. That's correct. Thank you. So let's go ahead and try once again. If I go to /tweets, and there you go. This is returning all tweets, right? Good morning from Hassan. Good morning from Sam, and doing a test from Sam. So as you can see, we restarted the application. In the last class, when we restarted the application, our tweets will disappear because every session has its own database, right? It's all in memory. So when we are stopping the application, all the data was removed. Now, it doesn't really matter how many times we stop the application and we start the application, right? We stop the application, start the application. Whenever we go to /tweets, you can see the data is coming from the database. It is because the data is permanently stored in the file that we created here, which is this one, tweets.db, which we cannot read, definitely. It's in the binary format. So all the data is stored in here, okay? So this is the good news. So now, next feature that we wanted to test, that we want to go to /tweets/Asan to find all the tweets from a specific username. So let's see. Okay, I have one tweet, good morning. Okay, and then let's go to Sam. Okay, maybe I misnamed it. It's Sam capital /SAM. And there you go, we have the tweets from Sam here. Okay, so let's log out and log in with some other username, maybe Raptor. Okay, and tweet one from tweet one, just tweet one. And let's go back and say tweet two. So now we have some tweets from Raptor as well. So if you go to /tweets, then now we can see that we have tweet from Hassan, tweet from Sam, and tweet from Raptor. Now if you go to /tweets/Raptor, and there you go. We have tweet from Raptor only here. So what is happening is that your function, with the function that we wrote here, get all tweets by username, select start from tweets where username is working perfectly. Get all tweets is also working perfectly, and create tweet is also working perfectly. So it's a perfect integration. It's simple enough, but it's a very good integration with our existing Twitter application. It's a great job. At this point, I would like to take any question if you had, and then I would like to also cover what is going to be, what the next session is going to be covered, what topic we're going to cover in the next session. So any question, please?
We have two quick questions.
Yeah.
Every Sunday it says you're doing videos like these. Is it always at 10:30, or is does time vary?
It has been on 10:30, at least for the last 1 month, but I think this time I'll probably have to change it, but I think it's a good question. So anyone has any preference? Can someone just in the chat mention that what time you prefer? How is Wednesday 6:30? If you just put in the chat a preferred time, then I'll try to match that.
Personally, I thought like the morning seemed good for me. I don't know everyone else. So that's what I was curious. Oh, one more question. Is there a way to review your previous recordings so I can get caught up?
Yes, it's on YouTube. So let me share that right away, real quick
Perfect.
here.
Appreciate that.
So all these recordings. So this is going to be app recorder. Sorry. Why don't I? Let me know if you can see this. Sharing this here. Please click on the link. You can also search it on YouTube. That should I think this is the link. Sorry, this is the link. Yeah. Please subscribe to the channel. Whenever the recording is done, I'll be uploading that to the YouTube channel.
Just by looking at your your channel, I see 2 through 6. Is there a day 1, or is that
Day 1 was unfortunately not recorded, but day 1 was mostly about Python basic. It wasn't about the Twitter application itself. So from day 2 onward, we covered the Twitter application.
Okay, then I'm not sweating it. I appreciate it.
Great, thank you. Any other question? Okay, in that case, how about we let's talk about what is coming in the next. Okay, I have a question from Shankar. Have to leave now. Okay, thank you, Shankar. But this is what we are going to cover in the next class. We are here, next class. So it's going to be a simple user sign-up system. So as you know, our sign-in system is not really the best one. So we'll be introducing a sign-up system where we'll be taking the username, password, and then we'll match the password, and then we'll hash the password and store that in the database. Now that we have SQLite database, we'll build our sign-up system, There's going to be a lot of learning, honestly, because sign-up system can be a little tricky and complicated, but there's a lot of things to learn there. And we'll be definitely storing the information inside our SQLite DB. Okay, and that's basically it for today. Please let me know how I can improve this session. I really appreciate if your feedback, so I can learn and improve the content and the presentation. And thank you so much for joining. See you in the next class.
Thank you
All
so
right.
much.
Yeah.
Thanks,
thank you.
man. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Have a good day. Bye.
Bye.